started IMF Talks. Now I'm with Dimitri. I randomly find his channel on YouTube, and I do recommend his channel. It's really, really good for anyone that likes this quant area. He has like really good videos about the quant world, about the quant career. So first of all, thank you very much for your time, Dimitri. Such a pleasure to have you here. And I will start with the question about the career in quant finance in US. In my group, I talk about the career in Brazil, but it's also good to know some opinion about the career in US. So what you have to do to enter on the quant world in US? What are the opportunities?
Okay, so to look at this from a quantitative finance perspective, I don't think a lot of people realize. So my channel has a lot of international viewers from India and Brazil and all over Europe and South America. But 70% of all quantitative finance jobs actually reside in the US. So it is the largest markets, hands down, with probably the UK in second, just because of the London Stock Exchange. But after kind of all that distribution, the United States is still booming for quants. They're still looking to hire more and more people, but it's super, super competitive. Because what a lot of people don't realize is most quants that work in the US aren't US citizens. They all come from abroad. They come to the US to get masters and PhDs, and then they kind of break into the field. But one thing the US has is they have a minimum requirement of a master's degree. And this is very different from other countries. A lot of other countries don't even have university programs that are specialized in quantitative finance, where the United States has tons and tons of masters now. There's more of them every single year. And so it's very competitive on the master side. And so I think a lot of quants now are leaning more towards the PhD side, where it's like, should you get the PhD just to get that little bit of edge, just to get that degree? But those are kind of the minimum requirements just to get your foot in the door here in the US markets.
So usually what happens, someone from abroad go to US, do like a master or a PhD, and then get on a bank or on a hedge fund. Because also I receive this kind of question, and I tell the student that it's almost impossible. Even though you can be like the best student of the Brazilian university, it's almost impossible to get on a hedge fund straight from the university. You must go to do like at least a master degree. So like to enter on a hedge fund, I think it's more like competitive. You think like on the quant world to be like a quant research, you think you must have a PhD, or with a master degree you also have a chance?
So for research specifically, I think it's predominantly PhDs. And the reason being is because the job is solely around research. And with a PhD, you take all the same classes as a master student to get going. And then you, at least in the US, you spend then usually 3 to 5 years just doing like hands-on, nitty-gritty kind of research. So firms typically prefer only PhDs. And as you mentioned, though, right, getting into the US with like a top degree from a top school from any other country in the world is super, super hard to get into the US. And one of the reasons that coming to the US is much easier is you'll typically come on a student visa. So you already have your foot in the door, like you're already on US soil. And then after you work through that process, then you apply for H-1B, which is the work visas here. It just makes the process a lot smoother. But I think it's really challenging to go from like another university and then trying to get like work visas in the US, which is a nightmare. And then also trying to convince companies to pay for those visas and to get you here, which is another kind of downside to it.
And about like I know some top student in Brazil that really wants to work on the hedge fund industry in the US. Which master degree do you recommend? Like which one do you think, from which universities you think is the most like recognized or something?
That's a super hard question. Because so quant finance is really just like that mix of stats, math, and computer science, kind of all perfectly blended together. And so I think probably pre-2007, masters in financial engineering or like computational finance, mathematical finance, those sorts of degrees were really, really sought after. And there's maybe a maximum of 20, 22 programs. And then over the years now, it's just exploded. And a lot of these programs have essentially dumbed down the program because they don't want to have it so rigorous that, you only have a few students applying. So letting more and more people in. And so I think like a statistics master's is another really good route, and an econometrics master's is a good route, and then a math master's is another good option.
Oh. And which universities you think like most of the hedge funds are looking at, like the Ivy League ones, or from like a medium university you also have a chance?
Yeah, so there's a lot of companies usually look around the big cities. So for commodities, it's far easier to go to a like University of Chicago because you're really right next to Chicago and you can get access to all those professionals quickly. If you want to work like in equity markets, of course, being in New York City is hands down the best because there's so many companies there that are hiring for hedge funds and investing. So being close to those cities, even if the school is not like the most well ranked, will be great. Again, the hedge funds do send out recruits though. So I went to University of Michigan, which if you look on a map, it's like partway between New York and Chicago. So it's not a good location to be. But at the same time, right, we had like Citadel and Two Sigmas and like Bridgewater and a few other companies coming directly to our school just because of the name brand. So do your research and try to find like big name schools. Doesn't necessarily need to be Ivy League, but if you're a fairly popular school, there should be a few recruiters kind of lurking around looking for talent.
Good. And also like a question that I receive a lot, and it's good to have like another perspective, is like I also received this question, like I want to start in the quant world. What should I do? So I'll do the same question for you. Like, so for the students in the beginning of the university that like this math and programming area, what do you think is like the first steps they should do?
So from the education side or from the career side?
Like both, like they're already like in the university, like in the middle of the university, and then want to work like in quant, finance quant. So what do you think they should study? They should focus on studies and everything.
Okay, so if you want to work in derivative markets, I highly recommend you're going to have to take a lot of math. So doing stochastic calculus is like everyone talks about it, and it's that one class that all quants can somewhat relate with who have financial engineering backgrounds. But for me, that's just like scratching the surface. You need to be going layers beyond that. And so some of the top programs should have multiple layers of math. To be prepared for that, though, you really need to have like PDEs, ODEs, Calc 1 to 3, and just take as much math as you can. Real analysis, I think, is like a bare minimum requirement as well. So really understanding it from a pure math perspective. But the other big piece I see a lot of students missing is they don't take enough statistics classes. So everything from derivative pricing all the way through like risk management, credit risk, market risk, operational risk, so working on like, you know, different aspects of banking and trading firms, they don't have enough statistics. And I can't hit that home hard enough because I went through school and I took all these risk management classes and they were always talking about value at risk and expected shortfall and I don't know, looking at business things. And I took a bunch of stats classes because I enjoyed it. And then once I got into the industry, I didn't realize like the majority of quant finance is really just statistics applied to different areas. So definitely take a lot of statistics. Once you get towards the end of your degree here, focus on writing the resume. That is the biggest key. I wrote, or a CV, as they call it in other countries. I wrote one and I had like all these skills and I could cover everything. And I got no feedback. No one would call me. And I had students in the same program with like the same GPA, same courses and everything. Right. It came down to they just had a very specialized resume, where for me, mine was just too broad. So I ended up failing for a good, 3 to 6 months. And then I got frustrated and just narrowed it down to one topic and focused on one job. And then all of a sudden I had 2 or 3 offers coming in for risk management. So definitely focus your resume or CV down to like the key skills that you see on that job.
No, I think you like touched some great points. Like that's why I really like your channel. Like the first one is about stats in quant. I think people in general like associate the quant area with math, but also for me like it's way more like stats than math. And also about the resume thing, like because usually people they have this idea like I want to work in the financial market, but I think it's really important to narrow like what exactly you want to do. So you're saying that helped you a lot when you like narrow your resume like to the specific like kind of like the job you're looking for. That's what helped you, right?
Yeah, that was the key. That was the difference between being unemployed and getting a few offers all at once.
And also like just one of the last questions, like I saw like on YouTube channel, you have like a whole video I will send to the group talking about machine learning, because also like this machine learning term, everyone's using, everyone wants to learn machine learning, but I think in finance, not that straightforward, like to use machine learning. So you can say a little bit, talk about a little bit about some applications of machine learning in finance, the challenge that there is to apply machine learning.
Yeah, so I think there's really three camps of people when it comes to machine learning. And I think like 99.9% of people fall in one of the two camps, and the third camp, which is in the middle, there's hardly anyone in it. But you have people that think machine learning and data science will fix none of your problems and it's worthless. And then you have people on the other side that think it'll fix everything. You can just apply it to every problem you have and it'll magically fix it. And then when you start reading a lot of the textbooks and looking at like the researchers and the experts like at Google, for example, they're falling into that middle category where it's like, it's an awesome tool and it can solve problems. But I think the biggest hurdle we have is figuring out which problems it can solve well. And then the problems that it doesn't solve well is looking for other statistical methods, some more traditional stats and math to solve those. So you kind of have to use it as a tool in your tool belt. It's not like I don't think it's an industry in itself. It's kind of finding it as like a career. I think in quant finance specifically, it'll get absorbed into the quant finance realm. You won't be a data scientist at a bank. But again, finding those problems is challenging. The biggest success points that we've seen to start with is just fraud modeling. So predicting fraudulent accounts, for example, on the banking side. They've been doing this, it's probably been 15, 20 years. So this is banking and finance has been using machine learning far longer than most other areas, but people don't know that. And then the other big kind of areas we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of success in credit risk modeling with gradient boosting models. And so this is a good way to kind of compete with logistic regression. But again, I think the biggest problem we see both on the stat side and the data science side is that there's really not that many experts in the field. And so people learn, a quick skill and then they want to apply it to everything. But I think it takes a lot of education and learning and taking a lot of courses online and reading textbooks to really figure out how to implement them correctly. Because I see a lot of people implementing in data science realm, they'll overfit models and then they think it fixes every problem out there, but they never even stop to look at traditional methods and try to figure out which option would be a better route. So it's booming right now though in banking as well. We see a lot of, so I'm sure there's books being published as well. There's a lot of boom in the data science side and machine learning and finance. So there's more jobs available, but I think in the long run, it'll slowly get kind of merged in with quant finance.
Good. And also like the last question, I also asked for like some indications of books, like which books like in specifically in quant finance do you indicate like to start like in quant finance, and also some advanced books that you like?
My favorite book is called, I'm trying to think if I have it. Hold on.
I know.
So it's called Statistical Analysis of Financial Data in R, and it's by Renee Carmona. So for me, I think it is one of the hands down best books available. The reason being is because the book kind of merges all the quant material together in one. So you're going to be learning statistics on one side and the theory, and it's going to be applied to financial applications and trading. And then at the same time, you're going to learn how to write the code for it. So it's like you can actually implement this on real data and you can learn in the book and then you can apply it to the real world. So this is by far my favorite book. From a theoretical standpoint, I think it's a book by Wooldridge on, I think it's called Introductory Modern Econometrics. So most people are going to read it and they're going to say, Dimitri, this is the simplest book out there. It's so easy. And yet when we work in the industry, like every problem I've ever seen is in that book. If someone would have just read the book and learned the material well, they wouldn't have had any issues they had. So those two books are, I think, my favorite ones, kind of my big ones. If you want to do data science and machine learning, I think Deep Learning with Python by Francois Chalet, that's how you pronounce it. I really like his book. It's super simple, but understanding how the dynamics work behind neural networks is important, just because it really gives you a solid footing to kind of explore in finance and try new applications.
And also, like I just remember this question that also receive a lot. They ask me like which programming language they should learn. What's your opinion about that? Like someone that is in the beginning of the university.
So I think it depends on the job. So if you want to work on like the research side and exploring strategies, Python and R are both good. I think Python will end up taking over, but I'm personally more of an R fan. I just think it's more geared towards like an academic perspective, where Python is more of like a fun tech kind of language. But R and Python are really good starting points. And then if you want to work on like algo trading, so you'll probably develop things in Python, for example, for research strategy. But if you want to make them very, very fast, you'll need to implement them in something like C, C++, or C#.
Okay, that's great. So I would like to thank you a lot for the conversation. I think it was great to have like a new perspective, like outside Brazil. So I do recommend Dimitri's channel. I will ask like if you can like recommend some videos from your channel for someone that is starting on the Quant area, because you have been with the channel a while. So if you get later, I send on the group, like if you can recommend like 5 or 6 videos for the group. So, but again, like I'd like to thank you very much for your time and for the interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me.